I want to welcome to the stage our next speaker duo, Margaret and Nick. Joining us for this moment is internationally acclaimed mixed media and fiber artist, Margaret Fabrizio, who has gifted the world with colorful textural textiles, born of really deep curiosity about the world and cultural traditions. And Margaret's going to be in conversation with Nick Brentley to explore the lifelong pursuit of creativity and how it leads to new paths. And Nick Brentley brings his imaginative curiosity to all endeavors, nurturing meaningful connection through image styling, dance, theater, music, and more. He is an experienced curator. When I was noodling on the title for this spot today, the Creative Agent Symposium, I was talking to Margaret, and she said, "What about creative paths to rock your boat?" And while that really, to me, just about sums up Margaret and Nick and how they move through this world. So I love it. Welcome to the stage, Margaret and Nick, and I'll let you take it away.
Great. Thank you for that intro. How you doing, Margaret?
Good.
All right. So that was a lovely intro. Thank you for that. Experienced curator. Many of you are probably curious as to what that means. And yes, Katie summed it up pretty well. A decorated life full of creativity and creative endeavors, the most prevalent of which right now is an image stylist, hence what you see in the background, this dress form. So when I saw that I'd be interviewing you, Margaret, as a textile artist, that spoke to me immediately. So I'm curious about a snippet of, not even a snippet, an overview of your life. Yeah, it's a big question. You like questions. We talked about this.
Adventure. That's it. It's all an adventure.
I love that.
And of course, a key element in adventure is risk. So it's embracing risk, I guess.
I love this. So for those watching, full transparency, Margaret and I spoke about a week ago, and we had a really enlightening discussion that was twice as long as we anticipated. And it just went anywhere that it wanted to. And Margaret loves questions. I love asking them. I truthfully have no notes today, just the notes that I'll be taking for this session. So Margaret doesn't know what I'm going to ask, and I don't know what she's going to say, and we love that. Embracing risk, yes, absolutely. So for those watching, Margaret's 93, I'm 39. There's a whole world in between us. She's lived a lot of life. I have a lot of life left to live. So when we explore this idea of creativity, again, it went in many different directions. And I think one of the places where it left off when we finished was this idea of answering the call. Can you explain a little bit about that, Margaret?
Well, there goes our half hour.
Yeah.
But it's based on a book written by Joseph Campbell, A Hero of a Thousand Faces. And the theme of that book was that we all have the opportunity to become a hero in our own lives. And we all get a call to go into some unknown area where there's risk involved, uncertainty, it's inconvenient, all of those things. And when you accept what he called the call, then you get more calls. If you don't accept the call, you might not get any more calls. So it's, I guess, for somebody who hasn't read this book or been familiar with this, just thinking of this way about it, I think it's just to stay open, keep open to what life is offering you. It's offering us a lot more than we can possibly handle even. So I like being able to go into some unknown, unprogrammed area that could even be dangerous.
Hmm. That is adventurousness defined. And it's fascinating to hear you say this because you're 93. And when we think about people who have entered that stage of life, the idea of being adventurous and trying new things for most people has faded. And so for people who are older or entering their old age, what advice can you give to them in order to preserve that adventurousness and the curiosity that continues to move your life forward?
Well, actually, no advice, because I don't think that you necessarily are going to learn it if you never did it. If you didn't develop a pattern in your life of living this way, I don't know what I would say to somebody how to start later in life. It's because I didn't start later. I was like doing it when I was 4. You know, I left home for the first time when I was 4, and I packed a brown paper bag and left. So, I mean, I didn't learn how to be like this or do some program or somebody told me how. In fact, I was, as most people, I was told not to. That's the problem. So I think the majority of people just were trained from the beginning to conform and to fit in the pattern and to behave the way they were supposed to behave. And so I guess I'm not a great optimist about thinking how many people, they don't even want to change.
I think you began to allude to something that we touched on last time we spoke, conformity. And what keeps people there is fear.
That's it.
Fear of what exactly?
Of not being considered as being worth being considered, to be rejected, to be condemned, to get a bad review, to get not be accepted, to be rejected, all of those things that we can't help but take personally, although they're not us. Why would we take it personally? That's that person, those people, that culture, whatever is what it is, and is doing what it does. We're ourselves. So I don't think that. I think just our culture is so complicated, and there's so much programming. It's really hard to get independent and free of all that, but I think it's necessary if you want to feel like yourself, like you can be yourself with intensity. See, I'm not. It's not about joy for me. It's about intensity. It's about the depth and the intenseness of the moment. And to me, that's how I think of joy. Like, I haven't heard anybody say, what is joy? What is joy?
Is this a question for me?
Yes, that's a question for you.
That's a question for you. What is joy? What is joy? Oh man. Joy is, I think of joy as an enthusiastic zest for life. For the moment, for the present moment. when you are fully engaged in what is happening with, through, and around you. Yeah.
That's close to how I feel about it too. I think that that word in the last few years has been just used so much, and it's never been defined.
Mm-hmm.
And people are using it different ways, and I often feel it's always an optimistic thing. It's always an up. Joy is an up thing. I don't think that it doesn't work for me. I think that's why I don't use the word, because that's the way I feel it, everybody is using it. Where I think it's really about the intensity of being alive. It doesn't have to be a positive thing. It can be a shock. It can be a loss of someone. It can be experiencing the death of a child. If you are intensely accepting that, well, that to me is like a part of joy. It's the awareness and the appreciation of what life has brought you at that moment.
Wow. Let's back up for a second. Let's back up. In terms of the call, or the many calls that could arise through life, which in itself was a mind shift for me, because we often think about following our call, listening for the call, answering the call as a singular thing. But you've mentioned that it could be many calls throughout your entire life. What does the call sound like? How do you know when it's a call? And specifically for you, how do you answer it?
It's insistent. It's something you cannot put aside. A thought that keeps coming to do this. You should do this. I should do this. Where am I getting that idea? And keeps coming. Or it could be a person. It could be a person approaching you on the street and grabbing hold in such a way, verbally, in such a way, and with such insistence, at a moment of complete inconvenience for you. You're on your way somewhere else, doing something important, something else. And here's this person who won't let go, who wants to actually to go home with you. If it goes on long enough, you realize, is this a call? What is this? Do I brush this person off, or do I take him home?
If these are the questions that you are entertaining in your life, I feel my life, I need to step it up. Man. So another thing that we addressed is this idea of people who live extraordinary lives. Lives that people write books about, they make movies about, or in this case, talking to. You've lived an extraordinary life, doing a whole variety of different things, most of which have been creative. You mentioned being active artistically when you were young. You started when you were 4. I think you mentioned putting on shows for your family and in the living room, which is a common story that I hear among other artists. But you also had an extensive career in music. So a quick timeline of your creative life. What does that look like?
Well, I was a musician from early on, and then I was a pianist, and then I became a harpsichordist, and did a lot of concertizing in the US and in Europe and in India on the harpsichord. And then I taught at Stanford for 25 years in the early music program there, harpsichord and 17th, 18th century performance practices. Well, okay, so then what? I was late 60s or something, and there's got to be something else, right? And I was interested in other things, and I was less and less happy with the academic aspect of music. To me, they were two separate worlds. So the academia lost any attraction for me. And I had always been visually curious and somewhat active. So I just, the last maybe 25 years that I've been working with fabric arts a lot, but I also did painting and photography. I used to exhibit as a photographer. And then I had a long period with a 40-acre piece of land where I did constructions and installations. And that was a bulk of my life until COVID. And so there were, I guess the big sections were the music, and then the textile art, the land, and you.
Oh, wow. So yeah, there's pieces in there that I wasn't aware of. The land specifically, the installations, didn't know about that. And so I'm really curious. I think I thought of this in the week that's passed since our first meeting. Are you married?
Oh, no.
Have you been married?
I was married 10 years.
Okay.
Exactly. I was in court for divorce on the 10th wedding anniversary. The judge noticed. And that was a great day of liberation.
Wow. And do you have any children?
Yes, I have 2 daughters, and they have no children. I will never be a grandmother. I would have been a good one, I think, but
You would be the coolest grandmother ever.
well, I could be your grandmother.
You could absolutely be my grandmother. I don't have any grandmothers anymore, so I'll happily adopt.
Okay.
We both live in San Francisco, by the way, for those who are watching. So this we clearly have to be friends, if not relatives. So I ask these questions because I'm thinking about people who are older in life, say older than I am, 60s, 70s, who may or even younger, who have families and for whom adventurousness and risk might not seem as feasible because it's not just them, it's a family that they have to consider. How does the exploration and curiosity, how does it maybe look different for someone in that kind of scenario?
Well, I'm lucky. They're totally supportive of whatever I want to do, however bizarre it might be. I'm just lucky. I don't get any flack from them. Maybe a teeny bit of wondering, Mom, but basically, so far, we don't know what's going to happen.
Right. So it's interesting, you receiving support from your family, those who are younger than you, to do what you're doing and to live the life that you've lived. It's interesting. It's usually the other way around. It's usually the youngers who are seeking support and encouragement from the older relatives to lead a path. And it's usually, not usually, but often an artistic path or creative path is one where there might be resistance because of what we were just mentioning, the risk involved, the idea of fear that it might not work out, that it might not amount to something, that you might not be able to support yourself. There's lots of ifs and could'ves and shoulds. And what do you do with all that? What have you done with all that?
I ignore all of that.
You ignore all of it. How do you make it work?
you don't have to make it work because it doesn't exist. I mean, I just shut that off. To me, it's wasted time. It's a waste to be wondering about how things are going to work out, or what if all of that. It's a waste. You could be being creative during that very time. Here we go. When you see that, when you feel that happening, pick up a pencil, pick up, do something, do anything. It's that kind of thinking. It's a dead end, and it feeds on itself, and you become less and less and less. Maybe that's kind of what aging is. I don't know, but I consider it dangerous to spend a lot of time on those ifs. It does more than just waste the time. It helps keep everything constrained.
Wow. Margaret, listening to you is like listening to the Oracle in the Matrix. I don't know if you understand that reference, but it means you have a lot of incredible knowledge. I hope people are taking notes at home. I'm a horrible note taker, so I haven't taken any. I'll just watch this replay and absorb what comes in through now. I imagine that there are plenty of questions in this chat that I have not been following. So Katie, feel free to jump in and field some of these.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both so much. Let's take some questions from the audience, and let's start with Sarah's question for you, Margaret. She's wanting to know if she understood this correctly, that you can't adopt an answer the call way of living at older age. You must do it from youth as you did. Or why could this shift be possible?
No, they come early in life. And so the thing is, if you never accept a call, it kind of dries up, that channel kind of dries up, and you might not get any more calls. That's Joseph Campbell's theory.
Mm-hmm.
You're entitled, it's your birthright to get one or two. and that's that. So that book, it was just I don't necessarily wouldn't be preaching that, but that was an influence on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love thinking about that. I've been fortunate to have worked with so many adults over 60 of varying ages in my career, and has seen the call answered at a lot of different ages, which is an exciting idea for us all, right? As we move forward.
Well, it's never too late to start.
Yeah.
You could create your own call.
Yes, I love it. Well, a couple more questions. Let's see. This is great from Angela. She's wondering how, and this is for both of you, I think I would say, how does creativity connect to living with intensity? Does it amplify it? Does it make it more possible? What's the link there?
Well, living is an act of creation, right? I mean, okay, I'm drying the silverware and getting ready to put it into the drawer, the silverware drawer. I can be worrying about today's meeting, or I can be looking at that fork, stacking those knives, enjoying how they're going into the container, hearing the sound they're making, the shoving of the drawer closed. I mean, I can be, if I'm actually kind of creating it all. I'm hearing it, I'm touching it, I'm seeing it. To me, that's the same as creating. You're basically creating that moment through your awareness. It doesn't have to be a canvas painting. I think if you have it in your life, it doesn't have to be a thing that you executed, a piece of sculpture or a sonata you wrote or something. Those are things you created, but the creativity gene, whatever that is, it can be much simpler and at the same time more profound than an object you created. It has to do with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I agree with everything you just said, that it's not necessarily in regards to something tangible. Sometimes it's experiential, because that's what life is. And as it relates to, say, clothing, if I was to take a photo of this image behind me and post it on social media, or if I'm just getting dressed for the day and go through rounds of edits of trying on this and then this and then this and then finally 10 minutes later I arrive at something that says yes, that in either scenario, what you don't see are all the discarded choices, the things that didn't make it in the end. You don't see the number of scrapped photos. Whenever I do a photo shoot here, my room is a disaster and I love it, because that's the mess that's necessary in order to yield whatever it is that I'm looking for, that I'm waiting for, that is being beckoned to be created. And you'll know it when you see it. It'll feel different.
It was part of it, actually. All of that was part of it.
All of it is part of it. That's part of the process. The process is part of, there is the result and then the process needed to get there. And all of it is necessary. That there's, even for people who are adept at whatever it is that they do, even they go through trial and error. Even they go through their own process. They don't necessarily arrive at the result immediately. There's still an exploration in terms of getting there. That's for me where the intensity lies, is the depth of that exploration to get there.
Well, yes, I agree. But I would also include the value of the errors.
Yeah.
The errors, and we were talking about rocking your boat, right? And so the uncomfortable things, the things that aren't working, many times I've found in the work that I've been doing the last 10 years, the errors are where the jewel is. The things that I was trying to make happen, I could have made them happen and it could have all worked. The thing that went wrong, very often that was the very jewel of the thing that made it great. I thought I was happy with it. But it's hard. It's hard to do that, to appreciate the errors.
It's so true. It's reminding me that as a person who leans into creativity myself, that, I always think every time I make anything, the scraps are so beautiful, often more beautiful than the product I'm working on. I love the excess piece, like you're saying, Nick, the stuff all over the room, like, the mess that's created. And I think that that's one of the gifts creativity gives us, actually, for life in general, is that, like, that messiness, those moments that are hard in life and not maybe ideal, the mistakes, the errors, the mess, like, that is part of it, right? Like, that is it, right? Yeah. I love that point of view. Thank you both for sharing that.
Because that rejection, that's what stops the creativity from happening. That's why we got in the place we are, because it was always rejected as being not good enough.
Wow. Kathy in the chat is saying, make your mess your message.
That's a good one.
That's,